Alright you guys, this episode of Paradigm Profiles is called The Evil Power Struggle. In 2012, following an 18-month investigation, the FBI, the VCTF, Violent Crimes Task Force, and the ECR-GTF, East County Regional Gang Task Force, as well as a coalition of local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies, launched one of the largest single takedowns in San Diego FBI history. This massive undertaking equated to a modern-day dragnet. In rapid back-to-back succession, the Mexican Mafia was hit with three separate superseding indictments: Operation Notorious County, Operation Carnalismo, and Operation 12-Step. The objective of this three-phase series of indictments was obviously to destroy the Mexican Mafia, or as they like to say, to cut the head off so that the body would die. A metaphor that the feds like to use, but unfortunately for them, one they still haven't been able to accomplish yet. But despite the vigorous efforts made by law enforcement and their counterparts, the Mexican Mafia is still thriving to this day. The only effect that these impingements have had on the Mexican Mafia have been to cause a temporary break in the momentum of its street operations, and then it's obviously interfered with its control over San Diego County. It's already been almost 13 years since these three indictments were unsealed, and from the looks of it, the feds and their constituents have failed yet again. I seriously doubt that any indictment, or legal maneuver for that matter, will ever result in breaking any one of these criminal organizations, including the Mexican Mafia. They tried to do the same thing to the Nuestra Familia in the 1990s. After a series of indictments at the intermediate level, they went after the street regiments, the manpower, and the street figureheads. When this failed to dismantle the NF, they then targeted the upper echelon by launching Operation Black Widow. The underlying purpose of this indictment was to indict NF leaders housed in Pelican Bay State Prison on a series of federal indictments, then move to vacate their state life sentences, and finally to disperse them throughout different USPs across the nation, thus breaking the lines of communication and separating them. The feds touted this as a foolproof plan, and they paraded it as a way to break the NF's back. But this obviously didn't happen either. Today, most of the leaders and influential members of the NF are housed together in ADX. They were never dispersed to different USPs as the feds had planned. I believe at some point they realized that this might have even worse implications than what they originally thought. Instead, they remain together so that they can continue to plot, strategize, and metastasize. I'm sure NF leadership appreciates the feds for giving them the ability to metastasize across the states, something that the NF was never able to accomplish before. All these indictments have ever succeeded in doing was to disrupt the daily business affairs, cause temporary derailment, and most importantly, and probably most significantly, it resulted in the defection of large numbers of not only NF members, but also NR members, Nuestra Raza, Norteños, and their associates. To law enforcement's credit, they definitely inflicted a lot of damage and severely hurt the NF financially by seizing large amounts of money, guns, and drugs. But when you cut one head off, another one's already waiting to grow. Throughout the last 20 years, both the Nuestra Familia and the Mexican Mafia have been the subject of numerous state and federal law enforcement investigations. The feds have definitely been a lot more aggressive and creative when pursuing these investigations. For example, prosecutors have consistently used the RICO Act as one of their favorite tools to take down entire operations, indicting the manpower, leaders in custody, and some of their associates. This used to be reserved for only specific types of cases and crime syndicates in the 1980s, but prosecutors have weaponized it and used it to their advantage for a number of reasons. Not only because of the legal implications and how it expedites the legal process, but also because it allows them to take down entire street gangs, prison gangs, and criminal organizations. I believe the NF was the subject of more indictments in the 90s and in the early millennium because of its paramilitary structure and because of how it's organized. Make no mistake about it, the Mexican Mafia has always been at the top of the food chain, and they've always been involved in organized crime. But I think they've been able to avoid criminal prosecution on a larger scale because of how their organization used to be established, or because of how it wasn't established. When you're operating without a traditional hierarchy or without a leadership apex at the top, it's a little trickier to identify criminal culpability. If you guys think about it, the Mexican Mafia didn't start functioning under this type of structured leadership until sometime around 1995. I mentioned this to you guys in the story I ran on Little Man. Prior to this, there was no commission or mesa system. The implementation of the system came later. Güero Sherm from Shelltown, Sleepy from Wimas, Güero Caballo from 18th Street, and Popeye from Harpies were considered to be the pioneers and architects. They recognized the problems that they had. With the lack of fluid communication, channel jumping, information was getting crossed up, and multiple influencers were stepping on each other's toes. Although intentions were good, this kind of confusion was at the core of some of the dissidents that was causing entire leadership bodies to fight over control of the same yards. Popeye, being one of the Mexican Mafia's visionaries, devised a plan to halt Sureño infighting on the prison yards. This consisted of establishing a vertical leadership structure, enhancing communications, and capitalizing on the illicit revenue that was being generated from the prison economy. Money was always there somewhere at the top of the Mexican Mafia's list of priorities. In my opinion, the Mexican Mafia was evolving and was getting away from the old way of doing business. It was to their benefit. Anytime you functioned under a system that has a pecking order with rank and file, things run a lot smoother and internal dissension is a lot less likely. So the Mesa system functioned on the simple premise that Sureños were better suited to execute the intricacies of a prison mainline rather than Mexican Mafia members housed 1,000 miles away at Pelican Bay Shoe with little or no communication or immediate monitoring capability. Keep in mind, this all took place when everybody was still stranded in the shoe. They realized that the old system wasn't working and that it invited too much conflict. But at the same time, when the Mexican Mafia reorganized this system and implemented this new leadership structure, they were also increasing the possibility of drawing the ire of law enforcement in these types of investigations. The bottom line is this: when it comes to criminal organizations, prison gangs, and organized crime, law enforcement pull out all the stops and are more prone to invest all their resources going after you. The proof's in the pudding. Look at what's happened over the course of these last 20 years. The feds, and law enforcement in general, have been a lot more aggressive at going after the Mexican Mafia as well. There's been several superseding indictments that the Mexican Mafia was the subject of. Fox, Lalo, and Weddle Sherm were just a few of the Mexican Mafia members that were taken down in these indictments. The year 2012 ended up being a bad year for the Mexican Mafia, as several of these operations were launched during that time. Some of those included Operation Dirty Thirds, Operation Night Owl, Operation Hat Trick, Operation Evil Hand, Operation Big Cat, Operation Halo, Operation Safe Jail, Operation Corridor, Operation In the Hat, and Operation Bubble Bath, just to name a few. Some of these were massive cases, and the implications were far-reaching, but the feds invested a lot of their resources in these three operations. Some of the gangs named in the indictment include the Diablos and the West Side gangs, based in Escondido, California, as well as Barrio San Marcos and the Barrio Fallbrook locals. The individuals named in these indictments were involved in a long-standing criminal enterprise used to extort money by threat or violence. Some of the main targets that played instrumental leadership roles were Mexican Mafia members Martin Evil Madrigal from Colonia Chiques, Rudy Crazy Espudo from the Diablos, and Salvador Sal Colavea from San Diego. The first indictment, Operation Notorious County, involved Crazy, a Mexican Mafia member from a San Diego street gang called the Diablos. The first wave included a total of 8 indictments charging 51 members of Crazy's crew, including one of those indictments charging 40 of these members with participating in a federal racketeer influenced and corruption organization, a RICO conspiracy. The RICO conspiracy alleged in the indictment involves the commission of both state and federal crimes, including attempted murder, kidnapping, robbery, extortion, money laundering, and drug trafficking violations. As stated in the indictment, the members, associates, and their facilitators are all connected to violent street gangs operating primarily in North San Diego County under the auspices of the Mexican Mafia. Crazy and his crew were allegedly involved in a long-standing criminal enterprise used to extort money by threat or violence. The money was then sent to high-ranking members of the Mexican Mafia, including Crazy, who was charged with orchestrating the whole operation. The indictment alleges that Crazy is a validated or made member of the Mexican Mafia who oversees their activities throughout much of northern San Diego County. Crazy is a well-educated, longtime Mexican Mafia member who is described by several Sureños working under him as a charismatic Imero who always took the time out to educate his people. Unlike some M members who would never invest their time, Crazy was always more than willing to share that knowledge and build off of it. This next video demonstrates how Crazy always took the time out to mentor some of the Mexican Mafia's most steadfast believers. These loyal Sureños, who are referred to as camaradas, are potentially future Mexican Mafia prospects themselves.
Yeah. You always do what you can for one another, because someday this is where I came from. ¿Me entiendes? Yeah. Yo sí soy carnal, pero soy carnal porque I was a camarada. You know, so I never forget where I came from, because that's where we all began. ¿Me entiendes? So always conduct yourselves appropriately. There may be times where, let's just say they had us all there in the vent in deep sink. And all you got is one little piece of fucking desodorante. Well, you know what, that little ass piece, we're all gonna so at least one day out of the fucking week or 2 days out of the week, we don't smell like motherfucking motherfucking wet dog, you know? ¿Me entiendes? You know, we're put in a fucked up situation. Estamos acá atrás. But we're all we got is each other. You know? So I want you to always step back and always, at the end of the day, man, watch, at the end of the day, always step back and reflect what occurred, what you saw, what you learned, ¿me entiendes? Or just be grateful for a little something that occurred that day, you know, like orale, you know? At the end of the day, you get a correo, good news, no matter what it is, just at the end of the day, reflect upon what went on, you know? Pero ustedes de camaradas, you don't do that, man. And if another camarada brings it to your attention and you see no wrong in it, then shame on you. The niñas are fucked up out there. There's not too many vatos out there to dar la buena clecha that the camaradas need, you know? And sometimes some of the camaradas we have out there, they're so focused on trying to get to the top, they forget the man to the right and to the left. Okay? So, right now, ustedes tienen la oportunidad to pick at my brain and to see how a carnal views things, you know? ¿Me entiendes? Yeah. And the only way you're going to do that is by bringing certain things to light. You know? This, what you guys brought to me, is a learning experience. Para todos, not only for that man, well, apparently he's not picking up what is being laid down, you know? Pero para ustedes escuchar de mí, cómo lo voy, how I see it, how I navigate through this, you know? At the same time, my perspective on why you don't do it, and you should have said, sorry, you should have realized you're wrong, orale, you know? So forth. So when there's an issue, you guys always want to talk amongst ustedes, and if ¿me entiendes? That way you guys can always school the next camarada chavalón that comes in your cell, you know? One or two of you vatos, let's say Stoppers by himself, and an 18-year-old, 19 youngster comes back here for fucking whacking a rata. Well, everything Stoppers learned, shit like this, proper etiquette, a way that a soldado, a camarada should conduct himself amongst his peers, y con los feelings, hey, he's to pass it down, you know? So that's why everything, situation that's here, you want it running like a smooth motherfucking machine, máquina. And it's a good thing que me avisaron, you guys brought to my attention. It's small and petty, but it's a learning experience at the same time. ¿Me entiendes? Do you understand? Understand? You know, so, oh, no. Hey. You guys don't feel fucking, if you're not sure about something, or, it may, you know, let's say even something occurred 2 years ago, but you were unclear on why it occurred or something, or a perspective, I don't give a fuck, you can ask me, you know? You know, you guys don't be shy. I'm a man just like you guys. Don't be shy just because who I am, or feel that, orale, this brother's gonna think que soy llorón. Nah. The only way you're gonna learn is by asking. Yeah, so anything you guys got, you know, or if there's fucking pedo in between you and another motherfucker, and, you know, two fucking knuckleheads can't come to common ground, hey, well, you know what, then bring it to the higher courts for a solution. It's better that way, and maybe I can find an appropriate solution than two camaradas stabbing themselves over something that could have been resolved another way.
That's right.
You know, you gotta keep in mind, you know what's happening out there in the linea. As a matter of fact, on one of the level 4 yards, I want you guys to pay close attention, you know. If you guys get back out there, avoid shit like this.
We're all validated, crazy.
Okay, well, you don't have to worry about it. But if you have another camarada that's going through something similar to what I'm going to explain to you guys, then you can always pass down your wisdom to him. You know, hey, you know, esto, this is wrong, this is the way that it should be, you know. Todos ustedes that are in the bench son camaradas. As camaradas, what are your guys' priorities?
Safety, security, the camarada, and the unity.
Okay, Stamper. One more time. Okay, well, could I ask Stamper, where's Stamper? He asleep on me up there. I'm gonna make that boy do 1,000 burpees. He gonna wake up.
Really.
Hey. Órale. Fast. Tu compañero.
Yeah, as my study said, unity, make sure we're all on the same page, you know, so when we strive, we fight together.
Shay.
Solidarity. One jumps, we all jump.
Okay, now you notice how some responses are the same, some are different.
Yeah.
None of them is wrong. ¿Me entiendes? They're all correct. Because that's what keeps us together. That's what keeps the steam of arms alive. You see? Different ways of expressing it or different pieces, but at the end of the day, that's what it all takes. Everything that ustedes say. Your loyalty as camaradas lies con la M, con los otros. That's why there's a difference. That's why we refer to the camaradas as camaradas, and we refer to sureños as the sureños. Now, I don't know if many of you been told or know, but you're hearing it. Every brother has a different perspective, you know. Pero los camaradas son los soldados de los otros that are there for us hasta la muerte, fuerte hasta la muerte, you know. Camaradas, their loyalty lies con la M. ¿Me entiendes? That's a camarada. Camaradas is where we make brothers from. ¿Me entiendes? That's where the carnales come from. En los camaradas. All of us que somos casados, all of us that got married, we were all camaradas at one point. So ustedes are doing what you're doing to get to the top. And it's only from that cream of the crop, de los camaradas, that we're gonna go. You know what I mean? Now, we're not gonna go pick a sureño. So there's a reason why you guys are called camaradas. And And not everybody is a camarada. So you guys should not be bumping heads, because you guys are supposed to be the cream of the crop. You guys are separating, and there's a distinction between a sureño and a camarada. Always remember that. You know, yo soy camarada. That's the reason why sometimes our ask, hey, guacha, okay, somebody introduce me and tell me, orale, guacha, hey, eres camarada or eres sureño? You know? And I do it for a reason, or ask for a reason. Como ustedes, I don't have to right here. Homeboy ya me dijo, el Casper. So you guys, if you can, always be united. You're only as strong as your fucking weakest link. You get 5 shoelaces, right? Now, get 1 shoelace and 2 guys tug on it. With so much pressure, it's only so much fucking pressure that they can take. You want that after a certain amount of time, it's gonna snap. Get the second shoelace and wind it up with the first one. Now what? It's stronger, it carries more weight. Get that third one, that fourth one, that fifth one, twine that motherfucker together. And now what, you got a thick ass fucking rope that can fucking tug a load. And it's gonna endure, it's gonna last. Ustedes de camarada siempre deben estar así. You know? That's what's gonna keep todo suave.
The second indictment, Operation Carnalismo, involved Mexican Mafia member Salvador Colabella. In the second wave, 8 members of Sal's crew were charged in one indictment with a conspiracy to conduct enterprise affairs through a pattern of racketeering activity, RICO, violent crime in aid of racketeering, VCAR, distribution and conspiracy to distribute methamphetamine and heroin, and criminal forfeiture. Additionally, 4 other superseding indictments charged 28 members and associates of Sal's street crew with distribution and conspiracy to distribute methamphetamine and criminal forfeiture. All 5 indictments were handed down by a federal grand jury in San Diego. The RICO indictment charged that the criminal enterprise was run by Mexican Mafia member Sal. Sal and his cohorts allegedly conspired to distribute methamphetamine and heroin, extorted and robbed others, and laundered drug trafficking proceeds. Like crazy, the indictment charges Sal and his associates with collecting the extortion payments through the threat of violence and through the commission of violence. The third indictment was described as the kill shot. It targeted entire street gangs and the associates who were at the intermediate level. These were the street level guys who dealt directly with the clientele and those who were being targeted for extortion. As I mentioned earlier, some of those charged in all 3 of these indictments were members and close associates of the following street gangs: Barrio Chula Vista, Eastside Piru, Old Town National City, Shelltown, National City Locals, Imperial Beach Imperials, Paradise Hills, Barrio Encanto Locals, and National City Block Boys. So Evo from Colonia Chiques was another Mexican Mafia member who at one time controlled Sureño gangs in Ventura County from a base located in Mexico. Since 2023, Evo was technically considered to be a fugitive after he had been arrested with another fugitive Mexican Mafia member and 9 others in Rosarito carrying weapons and drugs. But Evo was killed in Rosarito, Baja California last year in September of 2023. He had just been released from custody after catching that case, but the circumstances surrounding his death were highly suspicious. The other thing that was suspicious is that his death drew very little media coverage in Mexico, leading some to speculate that there was a lot more involved than just drugs or some type of illicit internal power struggle. It smelled like a cover-up, but this is all speculation. Over the course of the last 20 years, both the Mexican Mafia and the Nuestra Familia have worked a lot closer with some of the Mexican drug cartels, not only throughout different counties in California, Arizona, and Texas, but also south of the border in places like TJ, Sinaloa, Juarez, and Michoacan. But I believe this is twofold. As some of the cartels have transitioned over to new leadership and have continued to evolve, they've also loosened their stance insofar as how they do business and who they're willing to do business with. In the 80s and even into the 90s, the cartels had strict standards with respects to how they operated and who they dealt with. The prospect of conducting business with criminal organizations like the Mexican Mafia and the Nuestra Familia became a lot more attractive to the cartels when they realized the potential that these criminal organizations held. California has always been fertile ground when it's come to drug profits that the cartels have benefited from, especially after the introduction of fentanyl. It hit the US, causing epidemic proportions. And this went above and beyond just California. To this day, entire communities are still ravaged. Fentanyl and blues are turning everybody into zombies. However, after the infusion of these drugs that were being used as enhancers and cutting agents came out, this kind of helped change the whole landscape. Elevating profits exceeded the standards some of the cartels once stood behind. In the 80s and 90s, the cartels maintained some level of discretion insofar as what they were using as cutting agents, and rather than to focus primarily on just how much they could profit, they stood behind these standards on some level. What's scary now is that they'll use whatever they can to profit, even if it means killing off their clientele base. Aside from using some of the derivatives like fentanyl, Percocet, and other barbiturates to manufacture and cut drugs, they're now using caustic chemicals such as levamisole, benzocaine, lidocaine, phenacetin, baby powder, caffeine, chloroquine, aspirin, shoe polish, liquid Drano, and a litany of other household cleaning products. If it looks similar and it will add weight, they'll use it. They don't care that people are ingesting these pollutants into their bodies. The way they look at it is, that's what their dumbasses get for being dope fiends. Nobody's forcing them to ingest it, so why should they care? All they care about is the money. The cartels also recognize the level of influence some of the criminal organizations such as the NF and MA held over huge power bases of gang members across the country. These organizations held the influence and played central roles in selling, marketing, and pushing their drugs. Bottom line, this is a business that generates millions of dollars, and the cartels seen the bigger picture. On the flip side, the NF and the MA also understood the potential of working with the cartels. This was a symbiotic working relationship that benefited them all. Aside from having an endless supply of narcotics at their disposal, this also translated into huge amounts of cash flow, something the Mexican Mafia and the Nuestra Familia are both feeble for. Evil was just one of several Mexican Mafia members who were stationed in Mexico. Stroller from Tunerville and Malo from Westside Locals were two other Mexican Mafia members that were working over there as well. But all these guys actually came later, after some of these relationships with the cartels were already forged. Jose Bat Marquez has been credited with establishing ties with the contemporary drug trafficking cartels such as the Tijuana Cartel or the Arellano Felix Cartel. In 1992, Bat connected with the San Diego gang member by the name of David Popeye Barone from Logan Heights. Roy Boy Rivas was the one who actually introduced Popeye to Bat. During that period of time, Popeye was a meth cook and had pre-established ties with the cartels. Later on in 1992, Bat and Roy Boy officially sponsored Popeye into the Mexican Mafia. And although ties to the cartels and the Mexican Mafia have existed since the 70s, Popeye was the first carnal to serve two masters, the AFO and the MA. His relationship with the cartels began during a period when Popeye and Bat supplied and utilized San Diego-based and deported Sureños in Mexico to act as enforcers for the Arellano Felix organization, while also simultaneously entrenching themselves in the San Diego region on behalf of the Mexican Mafia, their first master. On November 27, 1997, Popeye was killed by friendly fire after a round ricocheted and hit him above the eye during an assassination attempt of a Mexican journalist. It's believed that the round was fired by one of Popeye's enforcers who participated in the shooting. Popeye, who earned his proverbial stripes as a high-ranking lieutenant in the Arellano Felix faction, is an example of why the Mexican Mafia should be prevented from interacting with the cartels within the federal prison system. The marriage of a ruthless, result-oriented soldier and the Arellano Felix cartel was manna from heaven for the Mexican Mafia. After Popeye's death, the Arellano Felix cartel respected the connections Bat brought to the table and recognized that he was a made member of the Mexican Mafia, whose U.S. connections could be useful in a criminal relationship. This was all premised on the lasting impression and the level of unwavering loyalty that Popeye left on the cartels. Bat was also highly respected, but they still considered him lacking the same level of loyalty that Popeye brought to the table. The exploits of Popeye and Bat became the topic of much Mexican Mafia and Sureño conversation and gossip. In one instance, Bat is captured on a secretly recorded FBI video boasting about his activities with the cartels. You guys should be watching excerpts of that video right now. I can't play the sound due to YouTube copyright, but this is where Bat mentions those exploits. Other Mexican Mafia members that were present at this meeting were Cowboy, China Boy, Black Dan, Smilón, Güero Shy, Pee-wee, and Chuco, the defector who assisted law enforcement in recording this meeting. Even without Popeye, Bat had vast amounts of drugs and resources at his disposal. At the time of his arrest in Mexico, Mexican authorities discovered a cache of automatic weapons and 2 tons of marijuana, all controlled by BAT. Other Mexican mafia members from the San Diego corridor who have capitalized on San Diego Sureños and the MA's relationship with the Tijuana cartel include Robert Tawa Romero, Frank Chino Madriaga, and Mauricio Psycho Mendez. All these guys exercise control over transitional street crews that have served as enforcers for the Mexican drug cartels. Evil operated in the Tijuana area in a world where Mexican drug cartels mix with deported or fugitive California gang members. Any gang member who speaks Spanish and catches a hot one flees to Mexico. It's standard procedure. In fact, Evil himself had been under indictment in the United States on drug trafficking charges since 2012 and was subject to extradition. But his extradition to the US years ago never occurred. His lawyer stated he was serving a life sentence in a Mexican prison, which was nothing more than a smokescreen. So his extradition for a possible 20-year charge in the US seemed irrelevant and unnecessary. This was nothing more than a ploy and a means to get prosecutors in California to see his extradition as a non-priority. At one point, Evil was in fact in prison, but he was released twice from Mexican custody under suspicious circumstances that are still not yet clear. Mexican prisons have always been known to operate a little different. Unlike California, where you have to do a calculated amount of your time, sometimes in Mexico, you can work the system with cash and a little coercion. But while Evil was in a Mexican prison, he utilized his wife, Lina Fuentes, who lived in Tijuana, Mexico, to control Sureño gangs in Ventura County. Evil employed the same extortion techniques which have proven to be the standard operating procedure for Mexican mafia crews throughout California. Interestingly, the transitional dynamic of this crew was controlled by a Mexican mafia member who was incarcerated in La Mesa prison in Tijuana. Though Evil had ties with Mexican drug cartels and worked in unison with these cartels, he displayed managerial skills by organizing deported Sureños in La Mesa prison. In at least one instance, Evil and fellow Sureños participated in riots at the Mexican prison, resulting in approximately 50 inmate deaths. Though some inmates were killed by gunfire directed by prison guards attempting to quell the uprising, others were beaten, stabbed, or burned to death. Deported in 2006 from the US after serving a 6-year federal prison term, Evil was known to travel between TJ, Rosarito, and Ensenada in Baja California. He developed a drug trafficking network to support the Mexican mafia and brought California-style prison gang politics to Mexican prisons. As I mentioned earlier, Evil was shot and killed in Rosarito, Baja California, Mexico. He was wearing a Chicago Bears jersey with the number 54 on it. Dallas Cowboys insignia was a common sight on members of his former Oxnard-based gang, and a Santa Muerte medallion around his neck. He had been shot in the back of the head. One theory that was floated by someone who had worked close with Evil claimed that the reason for his killing possibly stemmed from a robbery of a Los Aquiles controlled safe house in the area by Sureños under his control. What isn't known is if Evil was also a perpetrator who might have participated in the robbery, or if he was killed as a form of punishment for allowing it to happen. Another possible reason for Evil's killing might have been linked to his personal dealings with drug traffickers in the area, or an internal dispute with the Mexican mafia. Evil was working close with the Arzate brothers. When Evil was taken out, the Arzate brothers were the ones who had controlled drug trafficking activity in the Tijuana area for the Sinaloa cartel for quite some time at that point, primarily under the wing of Ismael El Mayo Zambada. This particular faction was currently wanted by the FBI for a large 2014 federal marijuana importation conspiracy charge. They were moving cubic tons of high-grade marijuana. Alfonso El Aquile Arzate Garcia and his brother Rene La Rana Arzate Garcia were managing the Sinaloa cartel's drug trafficking operations in Tijuana and the surrounding municipalities. They were also implicated in importing large quantities of illicit drugs, including fentanyl, to the United States. Known to be extremely violent, the Arzate Garcia brothers were also involved in carrying out enforcement operations, such as kidnappings and public executions. Recently, the brothers threatened their rivals in Tijuana, Pablo El Flaquito Huerta, who was also connected to Los Chapitos. They also announced their alliance with Los Rusos under El Mayo. Los Rusos primarily controlled the Mexicali border region. At that time, the alliance was meant to solidify Sinaloa's control over the Baja border region. The brothers, at a meeting with El Mayo, are said to have requested that Tijuana operations be all brought under a single command, that of the Arzates. This cartel is one of the most violent factions that's ever been seen operating in the Sinaloa region. Violence is literally the moving and motivating force. The brothers and their men are said to be behind many of the massacres in Baja California, including the 10 men killed at an off-road event in San Vicente, days after a large shipment of cocaine was seized activities at the nearby port. The goal was to kill Alonso Piña, El Trabol, who left the Sinaloa cartel to join a CAF faction supported by the CJNG. On the evening of January 24, 2023, officers from Tijuana's police department and Mexico's National Guard arrested Evil and 9 of his enforcers near the beaches of Rosarito. Evil was riding in the bed of the truck with several others. Evil's crew was traveling in a Ford F-150 with California license plates, carrying an arsenal of assault rifles and handguns. Baja California authorities published photographs of Evil and the other guys with their faces blurred, standing in front of a table arrayed with the seized weapons. Evil and his crew allegedly had 7 pistols in their possession, including an FN 5.7mm police killer pistol and 2 rifles, a short AR-15 variant using .223 caliber, and a 7.62mm AK-47 type Draco rifle, as well as ammunition. These weapons are called cop killers, as they have the ability to penetrate Kevlar and bulletproof vests. Aside from the weapons and ammunition that were found in the truck, there was also 3 large packages of marijuana. So Evil quickly established himself on the streets of TJ as a violent Mexican mafia member who commanded respect. And when an example needed to be made, Evil was all too eager to make an example. But moving in confidence and developing the reputation of a bully are responded to in 2 entirely different ways. Evil made a lot of enemies and he acted like he was a tough guy. This turned a lot of people down. Raised on the east side of Oxnard, California, Evil came up in the Colonia Chicas gang before being inducted into the Mexican Mafia in the early 2000s. After becoming a made member of the Mexican Mafia, Evil thought he was all that in a bag of chips, said someone who worked with him and agreed to speak on condition of anonymity. His outsized ego rubbed many Mexican Mafia members the wrong way. One was Tomas Huayno Grajeda of the infamous Grajeda family faction. Huayno mailed a letter to Evil verbatim. Orale Martin, just these few lines your way, hoping that they find you well, considering that things have somewhat gone to your head. Huayno rebuked Evil for what he considered to be abuses of his newfound authority. Keep in mind, Huayno signed off, you make your bed in life, or the life we live, then you sleep on it. I don't want to hear no crying later. A Mexican national, Evil served a 77-month sentence for illegally re-entering the country at federal penitentiaries in Victorville, California and Leavenworth, Kansas. After his last deportation in 2006, Evil retained control of his old gang and others in Ventura County. Wiretap calls revealed that Evil's lieutenants were collecting taxes from gangs and drug dealers in the coastal county and sending the money to Evil, who was being held in a high-security Mexican prison on unknown charges at the time. Edwin Sporty Mora, a Moore Park Locals gang member from Ventura County, was just recently sentenced to 27 years after he was indicted in another state operation dubbed Operation Wicked Hand. 3-month wiretap operation began in August of 2012. Sporty and numerous co-conspirators were tracked and followed after it was discovered that they were working as tax enforcers for the Mexican Mafia. Used 16 wiretaps and often worked 20-hour days to uncover details of the criminal operation. These cops were on the fast track and couldn't get enough, as information was coming in faster than they could process it. The investigation also revealed that Sporty's task was to set up a mesa, or a ruling body of gang members from all of Ventura County street gangs, even rivals, for the purpose of extorting local drug dealers. The Mexican Mafia demanded $500 a week, tax from local dealers. In the wiretaps, Sporty was recorded detailing how he squeezed money from dealers and how he beat those who refused to pay. Sporty was also expected to kill on orders from cartel leaders who were in prison. They were accused of robbery, conspiring to commit assault, extortion, home invasion, and drug trafficking. He teamed up to extort local drug dealers under the auspices of the Mexican Mafia. The wiretaps also tipped off police to crimes that the gang was planning. Ultimately, investigators thwarted a plot to rob a Simi Valley medicine shop in September of 2012. During a period of time when this investigation was still hot, Evil was still in custody at a prison in Mexico. In another wiretap, Sporty was recorded saying he needed to raise $50,000 to bribe a judge in Mexico. Sporty's crew wanted to raise the money to secure Evil's release from prison. Evil was also indicted along with his wife, Lina Fuentes, on charges of extortion and conspiracy to commit murder. Held in the Tijuana jail, it had been reported that Evil found that many of the inmates were deported California gang members who were accustomed to taking orders from the Mexican Mafia in prison. He began taxing the drug trade and disciplined inmates as part of his taking over the jail. He proved to be a headache for administrators, so much so that they transferred him from lockup to lockup, hoping to break his hold over the jail rackets in the area. Evil and several of his underlings in California were all charged in federal court in 2013 with conspiring to traffic meth in Ventura County. Evil's key lieutenant, Sporty, had his federal case dismissed by county prosecutors after they convicted him of conspiring to commit extortion and drug trafficking in 2015. From what I was able to find out, Sporty is currently serving a 23-year sentence in Calipatria State Prison. Prosecutors at the time had filed paperwork to extradite Evil from Mexico, where they said he was already serving life in prison. But he was never handed over to U.S. authorities and eventually was seemingly released from custody. It's believed that this was the result of a bribery on Mexican officials who were paid to release him. So at some point, Evil was released from custody, despite being named in 2 U.S. cases, one federal and the other one in Ventura County, in which he was subject to extradition. At the time of Operation Supernova, which was an operation targeting gangs in the Ventura area, Evil was considered to be an FBI fugitive. This is when it came out the following year that he was serving a life sentence in a Mexican prison, and his defense attorney argued that extraditing him to the U.S. didn't make sense due to this fact. But as I said earlier, this was all part of an inside fix to play down Evil's extradition. In the end, Evil became locked in a deadly power struggle with another Mexican Mafia member, Mike Boo Moreno. Mike Boo wasn't only contesting Evil's hold over the Ventura area, but also his collection rackets in prisons in California and Mississippi. Mike Boo thought he was doing too much. Informed that some of the inmates were still taking direction from Evil, Mike Boo was overheard on the wiretap telling an underling, "Whoever continues, they're going against what we tell them, man." He had his opportunity already. He had his chances. We gave him the benefit of the doubt, and he still screwed up. And whoever continues to fuck with him after we already told them, they're going to find themselves in trouble too. In 2013, Mike Boo was later arrested in California himself. After pleading guilty to conspiring to distribute methamphetamine imported by La Familia Michoacan, he was sentenced to 11 years in December of 2022. With time served, Mike Boo was released sometime last year. Evil definitely burned a lot of bridges. He made a lot of enemies during his reign. Not only in Mexico, but also back home in California, where his death is more likely connected to. I say that not because I think that the cartels wouldn't have killed a known Mexican Mafia member. I say that because I just believe that the circumstances pointed more towards problems Evil was having within the Mexican Mafia. I don't think the cartels would have hesitated to kill anyone who would have crossed them, including Evil. However, I just personally believe that they had established enough respect amongst each organization that they would have tried exhausting diplomatic steps first. To do otherwise, they would have ran the risk of spoiling that relationship over one individual. Who knows? I could be wrong. But getting at other Mexican Mafia members about Evil's transgressions just seems like it would have been more of a feasible option. Mike Boo is a powerful longtime Mexican Mafia member who has a lot of influence. He comes from a long family lineage that gave rise to 4 other brothers who are all well-established, well-respected Mexican Mafia members themselves. The family, known simply as the Moreno brothers, hailed from Norwalk, California. Eddie Pelon was the first of the brothers inducted into the Mexican Mafia. Eddie Pelon would become an icon who was also known to be a prolific killer. Ironically, he experienced an unfortunate and untimely demise when he choked to death on a salami sandwich in his cell at the Adjustment Center in San Quentin. Imagine that. After all the violence he lived through on both sides, receiving and inflicting, fate takes him out in the solitude of his own cell, gasping and choking to death on a salami sandwich. Mike Boo followed next. After Mike Boo was inducted and established himself within the MA, Jesse Pelon, who was the oldest in age, was made next. Another brother, Pete Boy, became made in an Arizona state prison of what has been referred to as the old Arizona Mexican Mafia, originally founded by Alvin Manny Sanchez. Tommy T-Bug, who was the youngest of the group, was the last addition made from the Moreno family. T-Bug was inducted in what was considered a significant departure from an old MA rule established in the early 1990s, prohibiting siblings from being made. This policy died soon after it was implemented, as the Mexican Mafia realized it was counterproductive. It was initially put into place as a safeguard to avoid blood family from having to choose their loyalty between blood family and honor. This ban originated from the organization's negative experiences with the Grajeda brothers. This was known as Mexican Mafia nepotism. I don't want to get too deep into this, but in a nutshell, this all stemmed from how Huayno and Chirrillo reacted to the Mexican Mafia's decision to put Cuate on disregard status. Unlike Cuate, Huayno did not have the hardcore killer instinct, nor did he possess his brother's propensity to manipulate and politic. Whenever Cuate faced adversity, he could count on his brother Huayno to support him. It would take years before the EMIC concluded that the vast majority of political desertion within the California Mexican Mafia faction was being caused by the Grajedas. Chirrillo even became vociferous about his brother Cuate having to go. Instead, the three Grajeda brothers would launch an extensive mudslinging campaign against anyone seen as an opportunist or a potential opportunist of a member of the Grajeda clan. Rather than adhering to the Eme rule, the Eme comes first. Even before Blood Family, the Grajedas defied the organization until each of them were played on the Eme's hit list. During this period, the CDC established a new policy requiring all validated Mexican Mafia members to be placed on single cell status, making it virtually impossible for the Grajedas to be touched by fellow members. I was there in Pelican Bay when this happened, when they classified all Mexican Mafia members on single cell status. In a unique move to circumvent any attempt at exercising authority, the organization placed the Grajeda brothers on disregard status, which meant that no Sureño was to neither capitulate nor listen to them because they were deemed to no longer possess membership status within the Eme. The organization also extended the hit status on the Grajeda's sons and nephews, some who had been hit. I touched on some of this in my last story about Little Man, but the Grajedas obviously stood on both sides of the Mexican Mafia's history, both good and bad. Anyways, before I close this up, nepotism between blood family and commitment is something that I've also touched on many times in the past. It's a dilemma within this lifestyle that most, if not all members are faced with at some point during their careers. Criminal organizations such as the Mexican Mafia expect its members to be unwavering and resolute when it comes to its members and their loyalty. You're expected to put all the things in your past life that you were once loyal to as being second most important behind the organization's best interests. Your immediate family, mothers, fathers, siblings, wives, kids, etc. Furthermore, accepting a life sentence in prison while maintaining things like loyalty and integrity are considered accolades. Furthermore, accepting a life sentence in prison while maintaining things like loyalty and integrity are considered honor-worthy. Holding your mud and forfeiting the duration of your life is also considered honor-worthy. Don't get me wrong, I understand the importance of loyalty. It holds a significant meaning in different facets of life, especially now in this day and time. It's always good to know that you have good people around you who are loyal to you and who stand with you in times of adversity. But I would never expect one of my friends to put me first before his wife and kids, nor would I expect someone to act like they no longer value their freedom and to prove their honor by spending the rest of their life in a concrete box. Just like everything else in life, I guess loyalty has its limits and boundaries too. But just think about this for a minute. We all make choices in life, and I still believe that when we make these choices, they come with the expectation of accountability. In other words, if we make our beds, we have to lay in it. Why shouldn't you? But if I'm going to invest this type of unwavering, unconditional loyalty into someone else, whether it's an organization, another person, or whatever it is, I'm going to expect to be shown that same level of loyalty as well. Why wouldn't I? If I'm going to be willing to give up my freedom, place my loved ones second, and be expected to make all these other sacrifices, then I'm definitely going to be expecting the same in return. I guess the question for some of us who have been committed to some of these criminal organizations is this: were you shown the same type of loyalty that you were expected to show yourself? When you walked on the brink of some type of adversity, no matter what it was, big or small, did that carnalismo wane or waver, or were you shown unconditional loyalty to the end? Were you given the benefit of the doubt, and did you feel like you were still valued as a fellow brother in arms? Or were you alienated and betrayed? When I was inducted into the Nuestra Familia, I was asked if I was willing to kill my own flesh and blood if the organization asked me to. I was asked if I was willing to put my wife and my kids secondary. I was told if I had a child that was on his deathbed and the organization called for me, I was expected to abandon that child and honor my commitment by going to wherever my brothers needed me. These are things we all have to place our own value on. We all have different experiences. If you think there's honor in turning your back on your biological family and abandoning one of your children that's on his deathbed, then this is how you define honor, and this is what true loyalty means to you. Maybe there's some of you that can flip a switch and turn off the loyalty that you once shared for your kids and family. Maybe you can justify this in your mind, and maybe you think this is how you demonstrate honor within this type of lifestyle. Unconditional and unwavering loyalty should mean just that, working both ways. Not just what's expected from you, but what you expect as well. If it's predicated on politics and the gang philosophy, which it most definitely is, then that's not unconditional and unwavering. It's predicated on a belief system. Whose system? And who's to say it's right or wrong? Think about what I'm saying, people. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode of Paradigm Profiles. If you liked this episode, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like this episode, give it a thumbs down. But either way, drop a comment and let me know what you think. As always, I want to thank all of you for tapping in and for continuing to support the channel. I've got more stories dropping, so stay tapped in for the next one. I'll be doing another live sometime soon so that I can address a couple of things that some of you have been asking about in the comments. And also just to interact with you guys since it's been a minute. You guys enjoy the rest of your week and keep pushing that positivity. With that said, this is your boy B, and I'm out.